mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 5, Episode 4 of Hulu's The Handmaid's Tale, entitled Dear Offred. The title refers to the card that June receives in the mail from Serena that is insultingly addressed to Offred, that is announcing, which June already knows by this point, announcing this information center / embassy that Serena is going to be in charge of. But I'm going to talk about that embassy a little bit later, because I think there's a lot of great stuff that happens in this episode that, even though it's not like one that's got like these big moments, there's a whole lot of great character work done here, and a whole lot of stuff that I think over the past few seasons has gone unsaid that is said in this episode. Like, I feel like a lot of characters' realities were kind of like put out on Front Street in this episode, and I really loved that, because I feel like it's been a long time coming that we kind of like get away from this kind of everyone's lying to each other openly about the reality of these situations. And then in this episode, everyone's very honest about the reality of everyone's situations. And I think that level of honesty and just putting everything out there is going to really help this show moving forward. So all that to say, I'm going to talk about Serena and this whole embassy a little bit later. But I first want to start off by greeting my patrons yet again. I got another one over the course of the past week or so, and I want to make sure that whenever I get these new patrons that I shout them out. So if you're interested in becoming a patron and getting a shout out, whether that be in the videos like this or in the episode description, which is where all the patron shout outs are for every video, you can find the major announcement video on this feed, or you can just go to the Patreon, which is linked in the episode description. So shout out to Delvin Cox, Brett Factual, Dez, Justice Smith-Williams, Brian Turner, Dancing Lights, and Margaret Moffett. So getting into this episode, I felt like I mentioned about the characters and how everyone kind of everyone's viewpoints are kind of not even just their viewpoints, but like how they look at life, their opinions are kind of out on Front Street and out in the open. And this episode, I kind of looked at it as like the everyone makes a good point episode, and it's hard to not be able to make those. It's hard to make these good points when everyone's kind of lying to each other openly. So now that people are being more honest with each other about their realities, I think that's why this is like a everyone makes a good point sort of episode. So I'm going to talk about this kind of like in major character portions, but every single one of these character portions features multiple characters either making really good points or putting things out on Front Street that have previously been unsaid, which is, in my opinion, another form of just kind of like good point. So I'm going to start off with June. She went into a rando at the park at the very beginning. This woman who comes off as somebody who's a friendly person who wants to see the baby, but we quickly learn that this woman knows June. She knows Nicole. At least she knows of them. She says something like, she mentions Gilead, and June kind of tells her to back off, and this woman calls her a slut and a whore and all this kind of stuff. June goes into full June scary mode over this, which in my opinion was quite justifiable, which is why it was interesting that the next scene, June and Luke are in therapy, and they're sharing this concern over whether or not June is going to react violently in these sort of situations. And I'm like, one, given the nature of that situation, I'd argue that June underreacted, and that June's reaction was not an act of violence, but that an act of violence was actually necessary and would have been perfectly fine with me. Like, if June beat the shit out of that woman in that scene, I'd be like, that's what the fuck she got coming. Like, if you're a recent follower of this channel, you will quickly learn I am a big proponent of consequences. I feel like consequences are not levied enough in this country, and that is what has allowed people to have the gall to mouth off and say, do, chastise, antagonize, and brazenly call people names on videos with no fear of reprisal. All of that, I think, is part of the fallout for people not seeing consequences for their actions. So if you run up on somebody and you talk shit, call them a slut, call them a whore, make light of their experiences in a place like Gilead, make the argument that Gilead is right, thinly veil potential threats to the woman and her child, you deserve to get fucked up. So like, I'm not sharing the concern at therapy here over June's actions. My concern is like, you let that shit slide with a warning as far as I'm concerned. Like, we just talking about it? Well, couldn't be me. But all right. But June is upset to find out that Serena is essentially being taken care of. Like I mentioned, she June doesn't have it yet at this point, but she does find out about this welcome center, whatever kind of place, whatever it is they want to call it. Whatever it is, though, is actually irrelevant, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But she finds out about this place that that Serena is essentially going to be living and working out of, and that she's being protected. And she decides she's going to go dig up Snow Gun, which I like how they tried to make it seem like she actually dug it into the dirt, but nah, she just threw it in the snow. She digs up Snow Gun, and she goes to the information center / embassy / welcome center, and the gun is too dirty from being buried in the snow. From being buried in the dirt. The gun is too dirty. She can't cock it. It's jammed. And then she gets out, and her and Serena just share threatening looks at each other, which I've already established that I'm kind of over the June angry face shot that they need to give us in every fucking episode for like a 15-second long moment, which they do at the end of this episode again. Like, man, I cannot overstate how sick I am of the 15-second like linger on Elizabeth Moss's face that this show has to shoehorn into like 85% of the episodes. I'm so fucking over that. But it's one of those things where like, if it's a bad episode and then I have to deal with the fucking long shot of June's face at some point, it's gonna piss me off even more. But if the episode is good, like I believe this one was, I don't really care about it. But I'm just pointing it out. They are running that well dry. So after June gets the aforementioned card about the opening of the information center, she says Serena is essentially going to bring Gilead there, and the only way they can stop it is to essentially kill her. And I love this scene because this is the first example of everyone making a good point. Like Luke suggests, she's in a building, right? They got building codes. There's all kinds of red tape. I know people. I can get the building shut down. Like, if you go up and you shoot her, what does that do for us other than get you in trouble, make it so we, make it harder or impossible for us to get Hannah? And he's making all of these great points. But I also think that June is right. Like, Serena left to her own devices would try to spread like a virus the gross opinions and desires of Gilead into Toronto and into Canada and into the United States. Whatever she could, she would absolutely do that if given the opportunity to do so. So June is right. But then I also like the added kind of subtext here that I think only comes along with having watched the progression of this character over the course of 4 seasons, which is that I've been beating this drum for I think maybe like since about season 3. And the drum is that June is fundamentally changed. She is all about the fight. She will create the fight when the fight isn't even necessary. That's all she is now. It's like when people get out of prison or they come home from war and they can't go back to normal and operate within a normal society. They're still set on war. They're still set on prison. And now that feels normal to them. And what is normal to us feels weird. That's where June is. She's already on to, I gotta fight Gilead all the time. Like, she is still set on war and refusing peace and a normal life. And we've seen that, they've leaned into that heavy so far this season, but this is something that I picked up on probably like season 3. So what makes this scene even better to me is that when June says that Serena would do anything to bring Gilead into Canada and the United States, and the only way to stop her is to kill her, that's true. But that's also June, that's who June is right now. That could not be true, and June would still find some way to rationalize being correct in wanting to kill Serena. Like, it's all about wanting to kill Serena. It just so happens that her motivation is true, which in most cases it wouldn't be. But all you need is that little bit of truth to really rationalize everything. And that's where she's at right now. She can manufacture a reason to fight out of thin air because all she wants to do is fight. And that's who she is. And then we fast forward later to my literal actual vindication of this claim, when June explicitly says to Mora, like, what if this is just who I am now? And I'm like, thank you. That's what I've been saying for seasons now. This is who you are. Like, you are programmed for war. Like, all you want to do is fuck up Gilead, which is perfectly fine, perfectly fair. But this is what I wanted, was for that reality. And when I say I wanted this reality, it wasn't like I felt like the show was doing something wrong. It's that we've dealt with this as a talking point for the most part up until now. It's like I theorized this is what I think, this is who I think June is at this point. Now it's out there on Front Street. Everybody, it's no longer up for debate. This is who June is, and I think coming to grips with that reality works for the June character, and it works for the people surrounding her, because no one has to be all in the same room pretending that the reality is something different than it is. Now they can all be in the room knowing June is programmed to fuck up Gilead. Luke is now also kind of on that same vibe, and like, I just like playing with the cards face up. And I feel like they're now doing that, and I feel like that's going to help move the show along a little bit better. Not that it's moving along poorly, but, you know, it's an improvement. Let's see. Lastly, June runs into Serena after she runs out of the information center, the welcome center, the embassy. I don't know why I want to call it all three names. But she runs out of there after June pulls a gun on this guy that slugs Moira out of nowhere. And June pulls the gun out. She fires it to the air. They rush Serena out of this photo shoot. June runs into her on the street, and she doesn't take the shot. You know, she's been wanting to kill Serena this whole time. She's got the gun. It's clean. It's ready to go. She's got the shot. She can take it, but she doesn't, which shows that she's been that Luke has finally gotten through to her. And I think that's important because Luke has constantly been making points that June has fought against. Because again, June is built to destroy at this point. She doesn't want to hear any kind of reasoning. All she wants to hear is a reason to go fuck up Serena, destroy Gilead, all that stuff. Perfectly fine. But now we see Luke is finally starting to get through to her. And that's why she doesn't take that shot. And then I think it's also interesting that when she doesn't take the shot, later they're in the car and June is like, you know, I didn't do it this time, but I can't promise that I won't do it next time. And then Luke says, shit, I can't make that promise either. And I love that because that also shows that June is getting through to Luke. And it's like, I see both sides. They both have a level of, they both have a leg to stand on in their arguments. And I like the fact that they are now both operating as a collective. You know, June is right in what she thinks about Serena. And I think even to a degree in what needs to happen to Serena. And now Luke understands that now that he's had a more direct interaction with Serena, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And Luke has been always the more level-headed one. And now that's starting to get through to June. And she's now, I think, can become a little bit more manipulative, a little bit more calculating. And that can be a little bit more effective in getting to where she ultimately wants to get, which is in Serena and in Gilead. Getting there via the Luke method, it's like you both win. You get what you want. And you can get there in a way that works out best for you, for Luke, for Hannah, everybody. So I like the fact that it seems like I said, with cards on the table, face up, everyone on the same page because no one's bullshitting anyone else anymore. Now things can run more effectively. So I like that for the future of this season, that everybody can be on the same page and be open and honest. And I feel like that's going to make them more effective. So closing out, I want to talk about Serena real quick. Like I mentioned, she gets her own spot in Toronto, the information / welcome center / embassy. And it's really just a farce, though. Like, it kind of feels like it's a prison that they're keeping her in away from Gilead. It's like they presented it as an opportunity. Like, oh, we want you to be like the face of Gilead in Canada. But then they put her in this building, and Lawrence is apparently turning down invitations on her behalf and telling her, like, oh, yeah, I guess maybe you can, like, have tea with, like, a Venezuelan wife. Like, basically giving her busy work, you know, focus on all this irrelevant shit, and won't let Serena actually do what Serena thinks she's there to do. And I think that's when it becomes a realization for Serena. And I think we as the viewer already suspected this, at least I did, but I I think it's a lot more clear now that this is never. I mean, it was clear that I think this was never meant to be an opportunity for Serena. It was just a way to get her out of Gilead. But the fact that they're not actually gonna let her do anything that she's trying to do, and that this place is essentially just another form of prison for her, I think that's more clear now, and I think that's more clear for Serena as well. I think the first time I said more clear, I meant for us, the viewer, and I think that's an interesting direction to push Serena in if she feels like I'm here to work on behalf of Gilead and she feels like she's got the moral high ground on what she's doing, but she's not getting support there. How is that going to alter her actions? So she gets a new guard. This guy's named Ezra Shaw. He looks like Nick to me, which makes me automatically not like him because I don't like Nick. Speaking of which, it was gratifying to not see Nick in this episode. I just feel like every time I see Nick, I just don't like the episode anymore. I can't pinpoint it, but she's later visited by Luke. We find out prior to this visit that Luke knows the chief fire inspector, and the chief fire inspector lost a sister in Gilead. So the chief fire inspector is down for like whatever kind of revenge they can get on Serena. So he found, I think he said 15 violations, that the building's gonna get shut down. So he presents Serena with 3 options. 1, the building can be shut down. You be homeless. 2, June kills you, and he's like, June gonna kill you, and I'm gonna let her. So that's option 2. And then option 3 is like, you just help us get Hannah back. And then again, another example where everybody's right. Luke makes a great case right here. You know, he's done things the right way. He's got the ability to shut the building down. He still gives her an out. You know, he also levies the threat. So it's like, okay, you got the nice way out, which is the building gets shut down. You got the really shitty way out, which is you die. And then you get the way out that kind of helps everybody, and we can kind of squash the beef and shit. Everything goes smooth. You help us get Hannah back. Good points by Luke on all 3 cases. I think this is a smart strategy by Luke. But then Serena's right too. She's like, yo, she's like, isn't that crazy how you never came to Gilead to try to save your daughter? Like, man, that's crazy. They had to fuck with you so bad. But hey, look, at least she had Nick there to comfort her with his dick. And he's like, Luke is like, bro, I'm gonna kill you right now. So I love the fact that Serena took it up a level by, again, pouring salt on the wound. She's right too. I'm sure a lot of Handmaid's Tale fans out there were not satisfied with Luke's lack of involvement in the June and Hannah rescue efforts in those first couple of seasons. And I'm also sure that reminding Luke that his wife found solace with someone else's dick is really gonna bother him in that moment. So I love that scene because, again, big facts on both sides. Shots thrown on both sides. No one can really do anything about it. They both have to kind of just eat that reality. So the building gets shut down and Serena gets moved to a new secure location that Ezra Shaw is like, you know, God came through for us on this one. And it turns out that they are at the house of the same woman from the beginning of the episode who threatened June, who did not have violence put upon her as she should have, and as June said that she did, but she really didn't. That's not what we call violence in Detroit. I don't know what you call violence. I don't know what you call violence in Toronto, but that's not what we call violence in Detroit. That's light work, what she got right there, the way less she deserved. Oh, I forgot I didn't even get to talk about Janine and Lydia. I'm only 18 minutes in, so I got a little bit of time. So Janine wakes up. She seems pretty with it now, pretty awake. And Janine and Lydia have a very interesting conversation. Again, everybody making good points here. Well, not Lydia, but we'll get to that in a moment. Lydia essentially tells Janine, you know, Esther's, you know, not quite awake yet, but that's what she gets. And Janine is like, yo, what the fuck? She's a kid. Like, what is wrong with you? And Janine just completely reads Lydia with just fact bomb after truth bomb after truth slap. Like, she just goes all the way in. She's saying all sorts of incredibly accurate stuff. You know, she says, Lydia mentions about living a life of service and grace. And then Janine is like, yeah, or else what? Like, you know, like everything with them is like, has the implied or else. Live a life of service or grace, or else I'm going to take your eye out, or else I'm going to cut your finger off, or else I'm going to beat the shit out of you, or else I'm going to send you to the colonies. Like, there's always or else this negative thing is going to happen. Which, brief tangent, has been one of my problems with organized religion in general, is that it operates based on fear. Do this good thing or you're going to go to this shitty place. Do this good thing or you're going to go to this shitty, or this terrible thing is going to happen to you. And it operates on like, I don't want to go to hell, so I guess I better do this good stuff. And like ruling in fear is how Gilead operates. Do you want to be part of a religion that operates like Gilead? I don't think you do. But I'm not going to go there. This is neither the time nor the place. But Janine essentially points out the hypocrisy in everything that Lydia says and does. Like, you talk about, caring about us and all of these good things, but at the end of the day, you do all of these terrible things to us. And I've been saying that this whole time about Lydia, like, and how I like the character, and that, I said last week, she believes everything she says to be true. And she thinks that everything she's doing is in these women's best interest. So now when this happens with Janine and Esther and this poison, now Lydia's forced to rethink everything. Like, am I doing this right? Am I doing what's best for these girls? And then she's got Janine coming out here like, you say that you want to do what's best for us, and you tell us this is what's good for us, but then if we don't do that, you do things like take our eye. Like, what kind of shit is that? Like, and Janine just completely fucking reads her, and I absolutely loved it. And Lydia then later tells Janine she wants Janine's help with handling the handmaids. And then she proposes to Commander Lawrence that the handmaids essentially only operate out of the Red Center. They don't go live with commanders anymore, and commanders only show up once a month for the ceremony. And Lawrence is like, come on, man. Like, you know it ain't just about making babies. You know these some nasty, kinky motherfuckers who got to get their rocks off. Like, what the fuck? You know that. And Lydia's like, do I? And he's like, don't you? And I loved that exchange, because again, that plays into everybody's right here. Lydia's been lying to herself this whole time. She knows deep down the reality. She's telling herself she's doing something that benefits these women. But Janine hits her with the reality of, yeah, you tell us that these things are meant for our benefit, but if we don't do them, you harm us. And then now Commander Lawrence puts in her face like, you know what the reality is of this, of what's happening here as well. Like, you pretend like all of this is for the good, all of this is for God, all of this is righteous and gracious and all this kind of shit, but ain't nothing righteous about what we're doing. These are pious men. They're out here being nasty. They're getting their rocks off. They want to fuck underage kids. They want all this kind of shit. Like, he doesn't say that, but that's the reality of what's happening here. And the way he challenges her, and you're pretending like this is a surprise to you, but I just love that. Do I? Don't you? Like, I thought that was such a great exchange, and I think it perfectly encapsulates how everyone is delusional here, and they all lie to themselves. But in this episode, everybody's realities and their truths are put out on the table, and I think that is going to work wonders for the show as a whole and for the remainder of this season. So that's all I got for this week. Let me know in the comments what you think about this potential face turn for Lydia. I don't know how I feel about it. It feels like the natural progression for this character, but she's such a good bad guy that where does that leave you? If Lydia starts doing good things and starts helping people, which does seem like the natural progression for her character arc, where's the bad guy going to be at? And I think we've got Serena continuing to be in that role. The new woman that she now lives with is Miss Wheeler. She looks particularly sinister, especially after fucking with Jude at that park. And then you have, who's the other person? Like a newer person. Oh, the commander, what was his name? The commander that him and his wife have, Hannah/Agnes. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name right now, but we saw him for the first time. I think it was either last week or in episode 1 or 2. But he seems like he's going to be a good bad guy as well going forward. He could kind of be like the bad guy in Gilead while they figure out what the fuck they want to do with Lawrence, because he's like a bad guy to the good guy, bad guy to the good guy. He could be like the bad guy in Gilead. Then we have this woman and Serena being the bad guy here in Canada. In Canada, anything that happens in Canada, it feels like the United States to me because I live in Detroit. It's like going to Canada is like the same as like going downtown for most people. So it feels like here when I'm talking about Canada. But they can be the bad guys there in Canada, And I think that shapes things up pretty well. So let me know what you think about everybody putting their cards on the table, cards face up, how you think that works for the series. Let me know how you think this Lydia face turn might work. And I will see you guys next week for episode 5. And until then, peace.